Evening and welcome again. This is Rick Staub, the president of Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg. We are here for another edition of Corby Connections. Tonight we are going into the community. We are reaching out tonight to Tom Imler, the managing director of God's Mill Barrel here in Hanover, which is a food pantry for the needy. Again, before we get started, I'm going to bring in our director or our host for tonight, Pat Cawley. Pat?
Thanks, Rick. Tom, we're so happy that you're able to join us. The Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg is obviously a service-minded organization, and you are truly doing God's work with the service that you do at God's Meal Barrel. I wanted to start by noting that on the sign in front of God's Meal Barrel in Hanover, Pennsylvania, there is a Bible verse, and it's 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 14, which, depending on the translation you use, says, "For thus says the God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the jar of oil fail until the day that the Lord sends rain upon the earth." That strikes me as a mission statement for the organization. And can you explain why that particular verse is on your sign?
Sure. I had to obviously go to directly to Doris to have her kind of explain why that became part of the sign. And I think for her, it was a reassurance that if she started this mission, that the Lord would not let her down, that he would provide, and the mill barrel would always, be plentiful. So that's been her belief. And I know over the years, from time to time, the pantry got a little low and things like that. But if you talk to her today, she says every time, the checkbook got too low or the pantry got low, the Lord provided. So that was a very appropriate mission statement.
And don't we all wish we could have that kind of unwavering faith? Tom, your background, we spoke a little bit before we got started, that your background was in insurance and making sure that people have security in their lives. And I'd like to think that you're doing exactly that now in a different way. How did you come to be the managing director of God's Meal Barrel, and how did you become associated with the organization?
Sure. Doris is my cousin. But she, we were raised where she pretty much was almost like an older sister. So we're very close. And Doris's sister Madge Groff is in the same situation. A lot of people don't realize about 8 years ago, Doris's health began to falter a little bit, and Madge Groff, her sister at that point, actually stepped up and has managed the mill barrel ever since then. I'm a local guy, but for the past 10 years, I was living in Florida, and I retired there. And but I wasn't ready to fully retire. And in talking to Madge and understanding some of the health issues that Doris had, and the fact that both of those ladies were well into their 80s, I just felt my calling to come back home and see what I could do to not only make sure that Doris was taken care of, but to also take care of the mill barrel. So that's how I got here.
I guess we should, for people who may be watching this and don't know as much of the background as we do on the conversation, say that Doris is Doris and Glenn Wolfe, the founders of God's Meal Barrel, which is a nonprofit food pantry in Hanover. So could you tell us a little bit about how Doris and Glenn started this? I understand it went back as far as 1986, but it's really a striking story of how they got started with very little and have maintained something for so long.
Correct. I actually remember visiting with them, and they literally started collecting non-perishable goods and storing them in their garage. And it was just by word of mouth that they invited anybody who needed food to come and see them, and they of course would help them in any way that they could. Then in 1989, they actually purchased the property on Baltimore Street in Hanover. And that allowed them to, there was an upstairs apartment that they lived in, and then the downstairs actually became God's Mill Barrel. And that, that really, at that point, they really did three things. They provided dinners, actually, for the community. They delivered to shut-in people, delivered dinners, and then, of course, provided grocery bags for anyone in need. Now, eventually, the dinners kind of went away. The funny story there was that I think she did it like 3 or 4 years, but Darce basically said that people in the community were going and they got lunch in the POW program, and then they were coming to Doris and Glenn's at like 5 o'clock for a hot dinner, and they weren't ready for that hot dinner yet. So they were more interested in desserts and things like that. So, from that point forward, then they decided to just provide the groceries for folks.
So you've gone as far as, so in 1986 it got started. They're in limited space. They expanded a bit in '89, but by 1990, the word of their work got as far as the White House. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I of course was not around at that particular time, but as we all know, their President Bush had his 1,000 points of light, and it was actually a recognition of volunteerism throughout the country. And Darce and Glenn actually received the gold medal. They were flown down to, I think, Disney World and joined, a bunch of people that got the same type of award. So that was pretty exciting. And, candidly, I think there were some announcements here locally when that happened. And that was the beginning of getting a little bit more exposure for the Mill Barrel.
That's great. And you provided some fantastic photos of not only of Doris and Glenn receiving an award from President George H.W. Bush, but also some pictures of the staff and so forth. And people watching this will see those photos. So I'm getting the sense that Doris wasn't in this for the recognition, but it probably was a good thing in terms of the sponsorship that the Mill Barrel has gotten. So corporate sponsors like Giant Foods and Weiss Markets and so forth. So have those contributions picked up over the years, and what kind of support do you get from the community?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing, actually, the way the community is embraced the Mill Barrel, at least, from what I'm witnessed in the past year or two. Corporate sponsors, I think I checked, last year we had over maybe 150 financial donations, and they ranged anywhere from $25 to $5,000. So, as well as us being able to provide for the non-perishable, and of course, what Wise Market and Giants do is they'll provide us with bread and cakes and pies and things like that. But we're one of the few food ministries in town that actually provide meat and chicken and things like that for our folks. So that, of course, that's an expenditure that we have. So that's where the donations, certainly come in handy.
So what is exactly the service area, and can you give me a picture of who's coming in from the community to be served by the Meal Barrel?
Sure. First of all, we have no requirements for the folks that come in to see us. It's not because we are private, nonprofit. We don't accept any state money or anything like that. we have a little bit more ability to help people without requiring proof of income or proof of residence or things like that. So, to answer your question, it's the greater Hanover area, from Spring Grove to Littlestown to McChurrystown to New Oxford to Hanover. We see folks from all over the area.
Are there times of the year where the numbers of people coming in pick up, such as the holidays, or I don't know, other times of the year when they might be struggling to find food?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The holidays. And, in addition to food, the community provides for us things like when it's go back to school time, we'll get hundreds and hundreds of backpacks donated to us. So, even for some folks that aren't necessarily in need of food, we'll hear from them once a year just, to come in and get the backpacks. The same way at Christmas time, where we have the community will bring in hundreds of pajamas for children. And then, of course, at Christmas time, we provide toys. At Thanksgiving, we provide turkeys. So when those holidays and things like that happen, we see people we haven't maybe seen for a long time.
I would think so. And talk about a full service support for the community in just about every way you can imagine them needing it. So in order to pull this off, you must have a number of volunteers working there to do this. And I think in the early days, it was friends and family of Doris and Glenn, but who is it today who's carrying on the mission?
There's a core of about 6 of us, and some of them are family people, some of them are from the church, the local churches and things like that. And then we have folks that will call us from time to time and offer to volunteer to come in on special projects. We have folks that'll help us do homemade dinners and things like that. So again, we've been blessed over the years that we've always had the volunteers that we need.
And what are the kind of items that you need to collect? Because the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, of course, makes it a regular effort to collect canned goods and so forth for God's Meal Barrel. What are the items you really need, either on specific occasions or on a regular basis? Are there specific items you're on the lookout for?
Spaghetti. When folks call in, that's the first thing that I always say. Listen, we always need spaghetti and spaghetti sauce. We always need mac and cheese. But on a broader sense, I mean, really any non-perishable types of food we provide. So it's, and you mentioned the Notre Dame Club. I think it was back around 2005 when your club first started assisting God's Meal Barrel. And I think the story I heard is there might have been a box of about 50 cans of goods or something like that was brought in. But I know since then, you guys have probably brought 30,000 items of food into the Meal Barrel. And of course, we really miss your bingos this year, but hopefully we'll get
so
back.
Do we.
But but yeah, so in terms of providing food and things like that, it's really the sky's the limit. I mean, sometimes we get very little on cereal, but we just try our best. And it always, as Doris says, when something gets too low, it always seems like somebody pulls up out back and says, "Hey, I got a van full of cereal here for you." So
just as Doris predicted, that's the way it works.
exactly.
And, you know, I was looking at you have a Facebook page. So that's one thing I want people to know is there are ways to find God's Meal Barrel if they want to learn more about it. So you do have a Facebook page. And I was looking at that and I saw something about, you know, that house purchased way back when, I guess in 1989, you know, Doris is not living there now. So I guess some financial arrangements had to be made for the property. Is there still a GoFundMe account open for that, or are you making some sort of effort to maintain the property?
Yeah, we Doris went into Homewood at Plum Creek, the nursing home here. I think it was October a year ago, and at that time we had to sell the house. We were fortunate; we got us a good landlord that's allowed us to keep our pantry going. It's we have to pay a little rent now that we didn't have, of course, before, but it's reasonable. So we're happy with the arrangements. We're going to stay right where we're at.
That's great to hear. So, do you have any sort of vision for the future of God's Meal Barrel? Where do you see things heading?
We do. We have a couple major expenditures coming up. We have a walk-in refrigerator unit that's pretty much on its last leg. So, you know, that's something that's going to have to be replaced. We have a van that's over 20 years old. So, you know, these are kind of things that are just in the back of our minds. But again, the community has already responded to us a little bit in terms of trying to help us out in some of those areas. So we're very grateful for that. We do want to continue to provide home cooked meals. Again, that's something that wasn't done in the past too much in many years in the past. So we want to do that. Our folks seem to really appreciate and enjoy that, and we want to start maybe reaching out to more folks who don't have transportation to come to us. We're actually, you know, seeing more and more of that taking place. And, you know, again, we have the volunteers that are ready to come in and help us in that area. So that, you know, that's something that we really want to work on here in the future.
Well, I hope that by having this conversation and getting the word out, that this will be part of the effort for God to provide and for the meal barrel to be full going forward. There will always be a way, but I hope we've contributed in some way to raise awareness of what you're doing and how people can help. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to turn this back over to Rick.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Tom, on behalf of the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, thank you for taking your time this evening. And I can reassure you that our club will be there when you need us. Again, we do miss bingo like you did, like you just said, but we will think of something to give you guys a hand, because Notre Dame's motto is God, Country, Notre Dame. So that is part of the God, and we will be there to help you. Again, Tom, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. And I just want to say I did touch base with Doris today. She knew that we had this little meeting set up, and she wanted me to reach out to you guys and certainly thank you for what you've done, you know, the past 10 plus 15 years. She really appreciates it. And she's still trucking, you know, she's very much aware of what's going on. So thank you again to you guys. Go Irish.
Thank you. Thank you very
Tom.
much. Yep.